أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. سابقوا إلى مغفرة من ربكم وجنة عرضها كعرض السماء والأرض أعدت للذين آمنوا بالله ورسله ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم. ما أصاب من مصيبة في الأرض ولا في أنفسكم إلا في كتاب من قبل أن نبرأها إن ذلك على الله يسير لكي لا تأسوا على ما فاتكم ولا تفرحوا بما آتاكم والله لا يحب كل مختال فخور. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. فالحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ثم أما بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. ففي الآية السابقة مررنا بما يشغله الإنسان في الحياة الدنيا. In the previous ayah we passed by what keeps the human being busy in worldly life, and at the end of it all, when it's not working towards forgiveness and it's not working towards saving ourselves, then it's just a means by which people got deceived. Mata'ul ghurur. In ayah number 21, in this next ayah, Allah Azza wa Jal then says, well, you've been running towards these things, here's what you really should have been running towards. And you notice that this concept of musabaqa is being repeated. There are some themes that from the previous surah have made their way into this surah. The first theme from the previous surah, we saw towards the end, there was farming mentioned. The example of farming was mentioned, and also Allah mentioning that when it becomes worthless, it becomes hutam. And in this, the example of farming was mentioned once again. In the previous surah, we talked in the beginning about the people of sabaq, as-sabiqun, as-sabiqun, the first and the foremost. And now we are told to engage in the race ourselves. Sabiqu ila maghfiratin min rabbikum. يعني هناك استمرار في الكلام. There's a continuity in the speech. Compete, race towards forgiveness from your master. Race to forgiveness from your master. وَجَنَّةٍ, and race towards a jannah, a garden. If you want to race towards some sort of valuable thing that won't become pale for you, that'll become boring after a while, well, that will be the forgiveness from Allah, and a kind of garden, the expanse of which, عرضها, the expanse, the stretch of which is كعرض السماء والأرض, is like the expanse of the sky and the earth. السماء والأرض. السماء يعني كل ما فوقك فهو السماء. Everything above you is السماء. السماوات is a limited term. Sab'a samawat, 7 skies, that's a limited term. As-sama is an unlimited term. As-sama is actually an unlimited term. أُعِدَّتْ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرُسُلِهِ. That Jannah, which with this infinite expanse, has been prepared for those who truly believed in Allah and His messengers. ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَن يَشَاءُ. That is the favor of Allah. He grants it to whoever He wants. Wallahu dhul fadl al-azim. And Allah is the possessor of the ultimate favor. Now, this is something I've been grappling with, for some time, and it's not really the place for this discussion, but eventually this discussion will have to be had. And I've brought it up in previous durus in Surah At-Tawbah and like Surah Al-Imran and other places too. But basically our religion, there's one view, which is, you could call it the minimalist view. The minimalist view is, here are the things you need to do to go to Jannah. Okay, so the minimalist view would be, here are the 5 pillars of Islam. You observe those, you stay away from the major sins, you make sure you take care of your major obligations, and you're square, you're set to go, Jannah is yours, it's not going to be denied of you, okay? So that's sort of a minimal, like, here's what I need to do to be saved kind of view of Islam. And that's also a quantitative look at Islam. Those hadith also, in some sense, are the quantitative, minimal view of Islam. But this surah is about qualitative iman. And a qualitative look at Islam gives you a very different conclusion. It gives you the conclusion that those 5 pillars and staying away from the major sins and fulfilling your major obligations is just the starting point. That is actually the bare minimum you would do as to not be considered a criminal. And not being a criminal is not an accomplishment. That just means you're a citizen. You're just a law-abiding citizen of Islam. But then on top of that, Islam demands some kind of struggle. It demands some kind of service. Islam is something greater than your own adherence. It's something that should be made a reality on the earth. People should know about Islam. It should enlighten, business. It should bring light. It should bring justice to social interactions. It should bring justice to your family. It should bring justice to neighborhoods and communities. It's not just something that was there to make your life better and fix your relationship with Allah, but it actually addresses problems of society also. So it's something that should be taken further. And if every one of us is only concerned personally about our own Islam, then Islam itself, you're serving your personal needs in the religion, but you're not serving the religion itself and its higher goals in society. Because it does have goals in society. I mean, if we're at the tail end of the Qur'an now, all the struggles of the prophets, alayhimu salatu wassalam, if you look at the struggles of the prophets, the common trend is that they're calling people to believe in Allah. But if you look at some of the things that these prophets said, when Shu'aib alayhi salam starts criticizing business practices, when Lut alayhi salam starts criticizing homosexuality and shamelessness in his society, when, similarly Isa alayhi salam starts criticizing corruption in the religion and religion being used as a means of, industry, when Musa alayhi salam criticizes slavery, enslaving an entire race of people, they're not just dealing with issues that are theological, like some say above the sky or below the earth, right? They're not just dealing with issues that are from the unseen entirely. They're dealing with realities on the ground that are actually happening. There are things that are actually wrongs that are actually happening, that these messengers knew that their faith doesn't just reform themselves personally, it reforms family, it reforms community, it reforms society. It engages with problems of society. So there is this concept of, concerned Muslim citizen. Concerned Muslim citizen means I want the solutions of Islam to be shared by humanity. And Islam makes me concerned about injustices wherever they may be happening. This is part of the struggle of Islam. And this is something that is basically, different names are given to it: da'wah, education, awareness, etc. So you can give it different names. But at the end of the day, there is a view in which that is an optional thing. If you're fulfilling your 5 obligations, five pillars, basically taking care, not doing major sins, etc., as I mentioned, you're fine. You don't have to worry about more than that. If so long as a few in the society are doing this, you're okay. You should be fine. Now, my personal view is because, I was introduced to Islam from many different directions. I actually recently wrote about this on Hadith of the Day. I don't know if they posted it, but the Hadith of the Day website where they post a hadith every day, I guess. So, but I wrote about how I was personally exposed or re-exposed to Islam in my early adulthood, after high school, early college. Because I was raised in New York City, you get so many different strands of Islam and so many different variations of thinking about Islam. So you get a pretty a diverse view when you have to sift through a lot of stuff. But basically, you can divide it into certain trends, and one of those trends is like movement Islam, or a movement-based approach on Islam. There are several movements that were kind of alive and well, kicking at the time, that were around. And basically all of them had similar trends. This is not going to be a halaqah about that. We have 15 minutes to finish the surah. But, the bottom line of which was Islam is more than just about yourself. That was the bottom line. If you want to just give it a one-sentence thing, Islam is not just about taking care of your individual religious obligations to God. It's about bringing the teachings and the light of this religion to society in one way, shape, or form. And that's an obligation on this ummah. The Prophet ﷺ had that obligation on his shoulders as he was departing, as he was leaving this mission. He basically handed it over to us and says, فَلْيُبَلِّغِ الشَّاهِدَ الْغَائِبِ, and let the ones that are here get it across to those that are not here. He handed that responsibility over to us as an ummah. And the Sahaba saw it as such. None of them said, well, somebody's doing it, I don't have to. They kind of took it upon themselves to take Islam to the world. And they saw it as something that they have to do. Like they had that view. And so movement Islam kind of does that. It wants you to think that the weight of the world is on your shoulders. You have to carry the message of Islam to the world. And then, there are other strands of Islam that don't say that. That say, no, traditionally, that's not our belief. Our belief is that within Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, these are the things that will save you from the hellfire, and this is an unnecessary burden on the Muslims that's been placed by this sort of interpretation, etc., etc. And there's a kind of a conflicting ideas about what it means to have salvation. For me personally, because I was exposed to a lot of these things from the inside, I didn't just read about them, I was sitting in halaqat of movements, and I was sitting in traditional halaqat and kind of trying to sift things out for myself. I'll be honest with you, 12 years down the road, I still haven't reached a conclusion, but at least one thing's ingrained in me that I can't get out. Islam is more than just about ourselves. That's for sure. How that'll manifest in a struggle, I don't know. That's something that requires a lot of thought. And I may not be the right person to be able to comprehensively, cohesively put a thought for that together. But at the very least, Islam does require a concern for more than myself. I should at the very least be concerned with my neighbor. That's at the very core of Islam. Your neighbors, if you don't take care of your neighbors, where's your iman? Right? And we don't even know our neighbors nowadays. Right? So it's kind of weird. But that's such a fundamental in our religion. Even simple hadith like removing a rock from the path. Doesn't that show concern for others? It just, from the very beginning, from the very essence of Islam is concern for others. And then finally when, this guidance was revealed, to make sure that people get to know not only how to better their life here and to remove oppression here, but to save themselves from eternal torture, in the afterlife. That's a concern. If we're humanitarians, we're concerned about human beings, we should definitely be concerned about their akhirah too, right? So this is a struggle, and every one of us has to figure out where they're going to fit in that struggle. Inshallah, maybe in the next session or the one after, I'll at least share with you what I have in my mind as one legitimate cause. I no longer believe Islam is one cause, that there's one project, one mission, one movement. I don't believe that anymore. I believe there are multiple legitimate causes. And so long as Muslims find themselves talented enough to give themselves to one of those legitimate causes, they're doing something they really should be doing to keep their iman going. Because now they're benefiting others, not just themselves. That's true spirituality, actually. That you see yourself as part of the mission of Islam in some way. In some way. And the classic flaw of the jama'at and the movements of the past was that they saw themselves as the movement, and every other effort was sort of, well, they're not on the haqq. They don't have the right methodology. They're not on the manhaj. They're not on this or that. There was some way of undermining other efforts. But actually, if you really take a step back and look at it, there are enough legitimate causes within our religion that need servicing. Children's education, for example, is a movement. It's a cause. And it's a critical one at that. It's something my kids need, your kids need. One day you'll become parents, the youth here, and your kids are going to need. It's a legitimate cause, Women's education is a particular cause. Da'wah is a particular cause. Da'wah to the Hispanic community is a particular cause. These are very specific causes that should be struggled for. And if there are efforts and organizations and projects that are trying to do some good, make some headway in those causes, one should say, well, if I have some talent to help in this particular cause, I should. The same way I've, for myself at least, identified a cause that I can help with, I think. And that I think I should get others to help with too, those that see themselves fit to help in it. That's all I'll share with you eventually, inshallah ta'ala. You probably have a pretty good guess of what that's going to be, but still, I'll share with you what at least in my head is a preliminary vision for service to deen. But that doesn't mean that's the only service to deen. That means there's so many others, and you might not even be the right person to serve in what I want to serve in. You might be way better to serve in some other area that I can't even begin to serve in, So anyhow, when we talk about racing then, this race is not just race to get to Fajr. That's the starting point. The stuff that makes you a better Muslim, we're talking beyond that now. We're talking beyond that. سابقوا إلى مغفرة من ربكم وجنة عرضها كعرض السماوات والأرض أعدت للذين آمنوا بالله ورسله ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم. Now when you struggle in Allah's cause and you race towards this cause, now you're going to be hit with problems. This world has two things. On the one hand, it takes your motivation away by distracting you with pleasures. That's already come. When you're in this cause, then the other side is you start getting hit with problems and they can take away your motivation. So on the two sides of the ayah of racing towards forgiveness, on the one side was temptations, distractions, and on the other side was problems. Look at this ayah. مَا أَصَابَ مِن مُصِيبَةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا فِي أَنفُسِكُمْ. There is not a single targeted calamity. I use the word carefully. Targeted calamity. Musiba actually is used in Arabic for an arrow that hits its target. And it's also used for calamity. In other words, Allah uses this word for calamity to let us know whatever problem happened was on the dot, sniper fire from Allah Azza wa Jal. This was exactly the problem you were supposed to have. مَا أَصَابَ مِن مُصِيبَةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا فِي أَنفُسِكُمْ. Anywhere in the earth, any problem that occurs, or it happens deep inside yourself, in your own personal life, إِلَّا فِي كِتَابٍ مِّن قَبْلِ أَن نَبْرَأَهَا, except that it's in a book from much before, but the fact that we made it happen, that we created it. Nabra'a yani nakhluqa. But bara'a in Arabic, actually, to create, one of the words for creating in Arabic is bara'a. But al-bur'u, interestingly, also means as-salamatu min as-saqam. It means relief or being healthy after being sick. That's bur' also. To create a relief. Allah calls the problems that come our way in the struggle for Islam, He attributes them as some sort of relief. Relief from what? Maybe relief from the mistakes we've made in our cause. So Allah hits us with a problem and we struggle through that problem, and that struggle becomes an expiation for our mistakes. He relieves us of the flaws that we had in our struggle. Those challenges that we face, perhaps they are a relief or a means by which our ranks are raised even higher, because we had more potential, and your potential won't come out until you test yourself to the limit. So Allah will give those who can handle it even more problems so they can overcome them, and their ranks with Allah will be higher. إِنَّ ذَلِكَ عَلَى اللَّهِ يَسِيرٌ. That is very easy for Allah to do. لِكَيْ لَا تَأْسَوْا عَلَى مَا فَاتَكُمْ. And I do all of this to develop a strong personality in you. And the way Allah says I'll develop a strong personality in you, He says so that you stop becoming grieved, you stop becoming sad over the things you lose. Something happens, you're trying to make struggle, you're trying to make an effort, you're trying to build a masjid or school or whatever you're doing, and somebody dies. Or the county shuts you down, or some problem happens. Allah says, when you really struggle for me, you stop worrying about your project. You just worry, did you spend hours serving me? So when something comes and goes, you're not worried about it. You're not sad about it. You know what happens with people when they work for Islam? Their project becomes Islam. That project itself becomes Islam. That project is not Islam. That project was just a means to serve Islam. And when that project fails or stops or ceases or whatever happens to it, your Islam doesn't stop. You still turn around and say to Allah, Ya Allah, that project is gone, but I'm still here, and my fiery heart to serve you is still there. I'll move on to the next thing. My loyalties are not to a cause, to a project. My loyalties are to service of Islam. So you stop worrying about whatever losses you suffer. And remember, Sahaba are listening to this. To them, their projects are Badr and Uhud and Ahzab, and those are projects. And when they're losing 70 shuhada, and Allah is saying, don't worry about it. So I did this to you, so you stop grieving about things you lose. وَلَا تَفْرَحُوا بِمَا آتَاكُمْ. And the flip side of it is true too. So you don't start becoming overly happy over your successes. Just because you gain success in your cause here in dunya does not mean that you're successful with Allah. That's just worldly success. That success could also be a test. So just like if you get overly depressed at failure, just like that if you get overly excited at success, and fail to realize you're still in the middle, in the thick of the exam, you're still being tested by Allah, you're still in the heart of the struggle, then you failed. And this is why I give you problems. So you don't become people hung up on failures or successes, rather you stay on point and on mission. وَلَا تَفْرَحُوا بِمَا آتَاكُمْ وَاللَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ كُلَّ مُخْتَالٍ فَخُورٍ. And Allah does not like any person that is mukhtal. Mukhtal comes from the Arabic word khayal. Khayal means imagination. Mukhtal is someone who's got a really imaginary high sense of self. They've got a very powerful self-image. Because of me, this struggle was successful. Because of me, this happened and that happened. This is a mukhtal. Usually this expression is used when Allah talks about materialistic people, arrogant people, proud people, self-indulged people. But the ayah is about struggling for Allah. It's actually talking about struggling for Allah. So Allah is telling us that even if you're struggling for Allah, that self-image and that self-obsession can make its way into you also. Fakhur, someone who's extremely proud. So one, you're deluded about who you really are, and two, you're really super proud of yourself as a result. Because a believer can only have pride in him or herself if they are completely oblivious to what they really are. Now, what they really are. One of the great things about Yawm al-Arafah, I tell you, beautiful advice that was given by the Shaykh in the khutbah. It's like everything about that day was awesome. Even the khutbah was just incredible. And the khutbah was هذا يوم الاعتراف قبله هو يوم الدعاء قبل أنه يوم الدعاء. This is a day of admission before it's a day of dua. You can't make dua to Allah until you admit who you are. You have to admit where you stand. You have to take a good look in the mirror and stop lying to yourself and tell Allah and tell yourself exactly where you stand, and then you can make progress. Allah says, and we're learning here in this surah. Remember I told you there's this perfect balance in the surah between spirituality and, real spirituality. Real spirituality will make you active in something. But if you're just active in something, and that becomes your religion, then you become proud of the accomplishments. And that pride is the death of your spirituality. So your Islamic project became the reason you became un-Islamic. That could happen to you. That can happen to you at the MSA. That can happen to you at the masjid. That can happen to you at the relief organization. It can happen to you. It's a really scary line we have to walk between maintaining our relationship with Allah and struggling. Because struggling involves dealing with people. And that can demoralize you, or it can fill you up with pride. Right? Wallahu